that we would not even be here today. So thank you for coming. Great to be with you this morning. All during Lent, in case you haven't heard, we have a really good lineup. At 5 o'clock, we have a Bible study right up here. At 6 o'clock, we have a soup supper, and at 7 o'clock, we have worship service in here. So if you haven't been a part of that, come on out and check it out. It's really quite nice. We have a sign-up sheet if you'd like to bring soup in the back, or if you'd like to bring some bread. We had a bread class a couple weeks ago, so maybe somebody who took the class would like to make bread. That would be lovely. Do we have any other announcements this morning? Yes.
2 more weeks to buy Easter breakfast tickets.
Easter breakfast tickets are on sale. All right, please stand.
reading is from Psalm 145, verses 10 through 13. All your works shall give you thanks, O Lord, and all your faithful shall bless you. They shall speak of the glory of your kingdom and tell of your power, to make known to all people your mighty deeds and the glorious splendor of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures throughout all generations. The Lord is faithful in all his words and gracious in all his deeds. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. And it was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have called him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The Jews replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you to ask me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out to the Jews again and told them, "I find no case against him. But you have a custom that I release someone to you at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" They shouted in reply, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a bandit. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise
It's true. I mean, I guess you could say this is part of our world, is it not? We have fake news and Fox News, and if you only listen to one or the other, you're not really getting the story. Uh-oh, Tim's getting political. You better buckle your seatbelts. So we have a story of Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate is famous. Most churches, his name is on the lips of every single person every single Sunday. So who is Pontius Pilate? Well, he was a governor that was sent to the region, including Jerusalem, after incident happened in the town of Sepphoris. Sepphoris was a small little town, about 10 kilometers from both Bethlehem and Nazareth. And the people in Sepphoris were called Zealots. There was a very strong political faction of Jews called the Zealots. And they decided that they were going to take back their country because their official theology, as they read it in the Bible, was that God helps those who help themselves. And that violence is God's way. And so, in a cloak and dagger moment, they killed all of the occupying troops from Rome's army the empire in the town of Sepphoris. And they raised the flag and said, "We are sovereign nation." Sepphoris. I don't think they fielded an Olympic team, but they, anyway, thought they had made it. And the emperor in Rome was so busy with so many other conflicts that he just kind of set this town on the back burner. Until Jesus would have been maybe 8, 10 years old, probably living nearby, and an army of troops of the empire were coming through from some other fight, and they detoured to Sepphoris. And in the words of the historian Josephus, not one stone was left on another. So he left the people, for the most part, but he took everything they had, and they destroyed everything, because they could. They didn't think twice about it, and off they went to their next conflict. Imagine what it would be like to be a carpenter or a son of a carpenter with a town nearby that needed all that fixing. Maybe you would learn a lesson or two about violence and how it only begets more violence. So Pontius Pilate was sent to govern this area and to keep this kind of stuff from happening. Pontius Pilate was in Jerusalem during the Passover every year. It was part of his job. He was there to make sure, along with troops, to make sure the peace was kept. What is truth? Well, Jesus spoke truth in power. We don't always know what that means, but we say it in our creed, and I'm much happier to say that than to say Pontius Pilate's name. What it means to speak truth in power is to live your life in such a way that the powerful structures that keep people down are illuminated for what they are. The powerful structures in the Gospel of John are not the Roman Empire so much, but they are the Jewish elite, the Iudeu, the Sanhedrin, Annas and Caiaphas. In fact, what's interesting, if you took a survey of the Gospels and you started reading Matthew and Mark and Luke in the order that they were written, probably Mark, Luke, Matthew, John, the further you get from the actual life of Christ, the more Pontius Pilate's role changes. Isn't that interesting? When John's Gospel was written, the Jews and the Christians had already gone their way. It was after the fire in Rome, where Rome started persecuting Christians and persecuting Jews, and dividing and conquering between them. John pushes a little more of the blame for the death of Jesus. The people that Jesus offended by speaking truth to power were the Jewish elite. And Pontius Pilate simply is saying, well, what is truth? I mean, I don't think this guy deserves to die. Did he do something? And the Roman elite says, we wouldn't have brought him here if he hadn't done anything. So they don't really answer the question, do they? Poor Pilate. He washes his hands of it all. But not in John's Gospel. He doesn't have to. It's not his problem. And so he says there is a custom of releasing one of your criminals on the Passover. Now, Pilate knew something no other historian ever since or before has known. That this was a Jewish custom. I think John is adding this in to further distance Pontius Pilate from the death of Jesus. Well, he offered up a criminal or Jesus. and the Jews chose the criminal. In John's Gospel, Pontius Pilate is not the one who crucifies Jesus. If we go back closer to when people actually lived that life and were there, we see a different story. We see that Jesus had many followers and was, even though the Jewish elite were upset with him, it was Rome. He died, after all, on a cross. A Roman torture vessel. And it may not matter to people who Jesus was executed by, who was at fault, who do we blame for this? But the further you get from Jesus' life, the reason why it happened gets obscured more and more. This last week, I went to a funeral with my wife down for one of her cousins in Racine, a place called St. Rita's Catholic Church. And I'm kind of a geek when it comes to theology, especially when it comes to liturgical practices in a church. And so we're there, we're thinking, my wife was asking me, are you going up for communion? And I said, well, of course I'm going up for communion. She said, well, okay, me too. And then, almost as a clockwork, the priest stands up and says, if you are not Catholic and you are not in the state of grace, you are not welcome at this table. Big shocker, right? Never heard that before. But what was different? When he took the bread and he broke it, and then he took the cup, he said this. This cup is a new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for many. This is from the Gospel of Matthew. It's right there, you can find it. The very first time this was written down, at a time when actually there were people alive who knew Jesus and knew the apostles, Paul writes in Corinthians, this cup is a new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for all. That's not a translation issue. It's not, well, sometimes Hebrew and Greek, it's all, sometimes it's many. The further you get from the life of Christ, the more the institutional church takes a hold of the theology. And what's at stake? Well, this guy, Pontius Pilate, he made it into the official creed of the church called the Apostles' Creed. And it was very convenient for the church because all of this stuff Jesus did with his life to show that all people are valuable and everyone is welcome. And this is a table of love and forgiveness. All of that is obscured when in the Apostles' Creed we say Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, comma, suffered under Pontius Pilate. The whole breadth of the life of Jesus is a comma after his conception and before his death. You don't have to look at any of that stuff Jesus did about touching lepers or healing people or feeding people, accepting tax collectors and prostitutes. You don't have to look at any of that. All you have to do is say, we get something great from this, so let's just keep it short and to the point. He was born of the Virgin Mary, which means he was God, and he was suffered under Pontius Pilate, which means his death is a gift to us. None of this speaking truth to power stuff. We can just ignore all of what Jesus came to do, in my estimation, which is to show us the heart and character of God. And he did it by what he said and what he did. I think if you would have asked Pontius Pilate years later about Jesus, he wouldn't have even remembered it. Jesus was not a significant thing in the life of the Roman governor. we could totally obscure the life of Christ, but we choose not to as a church. We choose to say that this table is for all. It's not for the many. It's not for the ones who fit the right paradigm. And then there was one more thing that St. Rita's did, but they got this one right, I think. And I don't know if he was allowed to do this, but he did. The priest. In Matthew's Gospel, it says this. He took the cup, and he blessed it. And he gave it for all to, or gave it for you. This is my blood, a new covenant for you and for many for the forgiveness of sin. Matthew tacked that little phrase on, which was never part of the deal. Why? Well, I think it had to do with what happened when the Christian church became the Church of Gentiles. First of all, we're going to talk about Pontius Pilate. We're not going to talk about the Jews because Pontius Pilate was one of us. And if you're going to sell the life of Christ and the Christian religion to a new group of people who are not Jewish, Pontius Pilate is a much softer path. And then we're going to throw in a little gift. And the gift is you can have your sins forgiven. Is this biblical? Absolutely. Remember a guy named King David? He was the height of the Jewish monarchy. Blessed by God in every possible way. What is he doing? He's out on his roof one day and he sees a woman bathing and he goes, ooh, gotta have that. And he does. Only she becomes pregnant. Uh-oh. Don't worry, I got this. What does David do? He covers it up. He calls her husband to come home because he's fighting off for David's army so that he can pass this off and no one will be the wiser. He comes home and refuses to sleep in his wife's bed or in his house. He sleeps out on the lawn or whatever they had. Because he says, if the rest of the troops in the army do not get to come home to their wives, I will not be with mine. And David goes, come on. So he brings him back to his house the next night and he gets him liquored up, thinking this is what's going to work. Because he won't be able to resist, but he does. And so David decides, just like your first day of school when your mom pinned a note to your sweater for the teacher, he pinned a note for the general of the army, and Uriah brought it to him and handed it to him, and the general opened it and said, okay, we are supposed to put you in the front lines, and we're to rush the enemy in broad daylight, and then we all fall back, only you don't. So then, David can swoop in and say, oh, I'm so sorry for Uriah and for his widow. I think I will take her into my household to be my wife. And her son, Uriah's son, will be my son. And no one is the wiser, right? This is all David's plan. This is there. You can go look at it. Go read the story. And then a prophet comes and tells him, I know what you did last summer. No, that was a Hollywood movie. And Joseph realizes that God has seen what happened. And so he mourns for this child, and the child dies. And then he writes a psalm, 51st Psalm. And we sing it all the time. I think most people don't realize that part of this psalm is this line right here. Against you alone, O Lord, have I sinned. Is that true? Did he only sin against God? No, but if we can teach people that God is the only person who cares about sin, and that what matters is the sin we have is only between us and God, then we don't have to do anything about it. We can take the life of Christ and push it off to the side. To you alone, O God, have I sinned. Send not your Holy Spirit from me. Renew to me the joy of your salvation, and put a right spirit within me. We sing that. So it's in the Bible. If you want to treat the altar of God, the table, as a forgiveness of sins machine, you can get you come forward and believe the right things, and you can be forgiven. You can do that. It's biblical. But it's not what Jesus gave his life for. It's not some prize you get that allows you to put the token in the slot and move into the next life, to the good place. When did all this happen? Well, it happened slowly from the time of Christ onward, but one of the biggest changes happened when the church went from being persecuted by Rome to becoming the Holy Roman Empire. It became the official religion of the empire. Not long after that, the creed was developed. So we can say Pontius Pilate's name every week. And we don't ever have to think about what Jesus did with his life. We can still get forgiven. I'm not sorry if this offends you. I think it's so important that we figure this out. What is truth?